Well, I'm Keshav. I'm from India. I'm from actually the southern part of India, which is Chennai. I did my undergraduate studies in Chennai as well, so predominantly focusing around accounting and finance. I then quickly joined an investment banking firm, Barclays, and I was there for about 7 years. I'm not sure why I stuck around for so long, but I guess through this interview, you'll sort of figure out why I'm saying what I'm saying. But yeah, so I was in Barclays for 7 years, maybe 7 years too long. And I finally decided to take the leap of faith and do an MBA, and it turned out to be Bath. And I'm thoroughly excited and actually pretty happy that I went and did my, MBA at the University of Bath. So as soon as I joined work, actually before I joined work, I always knew that I wanted to do an MBA. Actually, not really an MBA, but a master's of some sort. At that point, I wasn't sure as to what field I wanted to specialize in, but I knew that at some point I am going to do some sort of higher studies. So I sort of always had that in the back of my mind that this was not going to be the rest of my life. And maybe that's not the right attitude, but anyway, that was what it was. So my first 2 years, I was in the back office of banking operations, long hours, maybe 12 to 13-hour days, constantly coming back home and thinking, why am I doing this to myself? It was torture, but it was a great learning experience. I learned a little bit something about myself whilst working for Barclays. It was a great learning opportunity. And the reason I sort of stuck around at Barclays for 7 years was I was constantly growing within the firm. And the organization is so big, it allows people to grow. It allows people to sort of have their own sort of creativity and vision. And I really liked the people I was working with. So I managed to stick around in Barclays. But I think at that 5-year junction, I spoke to a lot of, my mentors at the firm who were senior level people, directors and managing directors. And most of them almost said, you know what, you don't need an MBA. What you need is a serious work ethic and some more experience. Contrary to what they said, I went ahead, I decided to do an MBA anyway, because most of them who gave me advice, they seem to have an MBA degree with them already. So I think it was at that 5-year mark where I realized, you know what, enough is enough. It's high time I decided to, go out and make something for myself and of myself. So I think that's the point where I cracked, if you will. I was working for a very large named organization, but most of the work that we predominantly did were back operations to middle operations, middle office kind of work. So, and the chunky stuff was in, the headquarters, which would be the US or the UK. Let me tell you a little bit something about India as well. It's a highly competitive market. You almost always have to keep upskilling yourself. So an MBA is almost the norm. Every second person on the road has an MBA. So it almost depends on where you do this MBA from, which is why I think UK stood out as a great perspective. Bath, on the other hand, was a great university. I read so much about the city. I did a whole lot of research around universities in the UK. And I guess from a security standpoint, which is again very important, COVID played a huge role. And the fact that most programs in the UK offer a 1-year program made a lot of sense to me. So, I could step out of work for that 1 year and then jump back into the workforce post that 1 year. So it made sense to me having, considered these options. So at the start, when I decided that I wanted to do an MBA, it was because I wanted to run my business. I wanted to start my own business and not just the finance bit of things. So I wanted to understand the different aspects that it required to start a business. And not only that, when I started this MBA journey, we had these great seminars as to what you could do with this MBA. And there were usually 3 options. You could start your own business, you can fast track your career, or you can you can change your career tracks. And let me tell you, changing your career tracks is not for the faint-hearted. It's not as easy as it sounds. And, I wanted to be a consultant for a very long time. And then maybe after doing a little bit more research, I decided against it. So I started out wanting to change careers. And then now at this point, I'm looking at fast tracking my existing career. But the real reason why I did this MBA would probably be to be able to run my own business maybe 5 to 10 years down the line. So the way I see it, it's a long-term game, and that's the only way you're sort of going to really reap its actual benefits. Most people think of doing an MBA to maybe get into the country, to maybe get a better paying job, to maybe move to across continents and sort of get this new work culture. But I think it's a bit more than that. And obviously, I can't agree with you right now because I haven't spent enough time after graduating. But maybe 10 years down the line, we can have this same conversation again, and then I'll be in a better position to sort of agree. At that point, when I was doing my research, I knew that I zeroed in on UK as a location for multiple reasons. Predominantly, me having my background at Barclays, worked with a number of sort of customers and clients in the UK. I figured it would be an easy opportunity for myself to land a job post the MBA graduation. Now, why Bath? So I looked at schools such as the Manchester Business School, University of Edinburgh, University of Glasgow, Warwick, London Business School, and a bunch of schools. London Business School was obviously the tier 1 school and above my sort of budget that I could afford. So let's park that aside for now. But the remaining schools, I really did consider. And I'll give you 5 factors or maybe 3 factors as to why I sort of chose Bath. Number 1, their admissions team was really, really prompt. And this might seem like one of those sort of not a very great reason, but at that point, when you're sort of looking for schools, you're trying to plan and make decisions based on their sort of response. They came back to me really, really quick, promptly. Any sort of questions that I had, they'd always be the first school to respond. Other schools, for some reason, their turnaround time was really, really slow. And even though I did manage to get admission into their schools, I finally decided to go with Bath. Their admission team was great. They have this 5 project suite, which is again amazing. So throughout the course of the program, you work with 5 different companies, and this could be small scale companies to really large scale companies. So one of my large scale projects was that I worked with Lloyd's Bank, which was a great opportunity. Again, me being from a banking sector, I was really, really interested, and we worked on the future of work project. So it was great to interact with different folk, try to figure out and mainly put what we've learned on this MBA to the actual project. So we had a consulting project, we had this large scale project, we had an entrepreneurship project, and the likes of those projects. The multi-project suite was really, really cool. And they also on the brochure, they mentioned they had a very solid careers team, which I can now confidently say that they really do pay individual focused attention. And another factor was that Bath as a school and as a program, they like to keep their cohort rather small as opposed to your other business schools where it's usually over 100 people in your cohort. So we had, I think, about 50 people where you could almost get that individual attention if you ever needed it. So these were multiple factors that led me to choose Bath as a school. I guess when I came into the MBA, I had a bunch of questions, as to what the MBA would be, how do I sort of act and behave on an MBA class. And I did obviously ask my professors as to what they expect out of me. I think at the end of the MBA, as opposed to having answers, I think I may have more questions than what I started out before. Having said that, but I guess at the end, having completed an MBA, now I know that I have the tools to sort of get and find the answers myself, which I think is most important. So I still have those questions, but now I know how to sort of go and get and find the answers for myself. When you start out in the MBA, you always think that you're the smartest in the room. As you go through the course, you almost realize that you're never smartest in the room. And it's okay not to be the smartest in the room. It's about finding out who has the right ideas, the right time, and engaging your stakeholders, so to speak. Which I think was one of the biggest learnings that I had on the MBA. I had never been to the UK before. I landed in London, stayed in London for a couple of days, got used to the hustle and bustle and expected Bath to be something similar. Well, let me tell you, it was not. But what I did like about Bath is as soon as you sort of enter Bath, you almost immediately know you're there because the air smells crisper, everything is fresher, and the streets are way cleaner. And Bath is really, really small. So anywhere we used to step out to, even for maybe a couple of us to step out, get a couple of drinks, it always would be a 15-minute walk to anywhere within Bath. So I think it's really, really convenient for students to get around. It's a very safe town. We used to sort of walk in the middle of the night and even beyond that. So it's absolutely a safe place to sort of study. The university itself has an amazing campus, number of study rooms for us to go and occupy. Our classroom was huge and had projectors and the works. The university had a number of sports facilities which we used from time to time. So I would say overall, it was a great city. It looked beautiful. The people were polite. Honestly, I couldn't ask for more. Very, very different. And I think it's almost like, when you try to get some sleep in the middle of the night, you can hear yourself breathing. In Chennai, that's never the case because you always have people chattering. You have cows moving, I guess. But yeah, in Bath, you can hear yourself breathe, which it does take some getting used to. I'm not going to lie. But once you do, I guess you almost crave that. So now I'm worried to go back and live like in a bustle sort of a city kind of life. But I'm also excited. So yeah, that's the major difference. You do get some support in terms of the scholarships that they do offer the University of Bath. So if you're rather one of the brighter ones, you would apply earlier so that you can secure a larger amount. So the scholarship amount that I received was £5,000, which equates to about 5 lakhs. And the way I sort of went about budgeting my complete tuition was, I think the tuition fees was about 30 lakhs, out of which we got, I think this is inclusive of the discount. Then you'd also have to account for your accommodation, which I budgeted about 12 lakhs for that. Your living expenses is depending on how you want to live, and you want to sort of live a luxurious life or a moderate life. And I pretty much decided to live a student to semi-student kind of life. So I budgeted for about another 5 to 7 lakhs. And now having completed the MBA, I think I can say about 45 to 50 lakhs is what you should ideally aim to budget for. If you can do that under it, brilliant, but you should ideally sort of not try and go over the 50 lakh budget that sort of I set out for myself. For a guy like me, the MBA is not only about career development, it's also a lot about personal growth and development. So I was the kind of guy who was in India who couldn't boil water. And that's how I moved to the UK, actually, in the midst of a pandemic, mind you. So I moved to Bath when you had to quarantine for about 14 days, not knowing how to cook as well. So I think we had noodles for 14 days straight, me and this other cohort member of mine. Thankfully, we had each other. So we'd wake up, we'd spend time with each other, we'd figure out how to cook and boil water is what I really mean by cooking. But today I can actually say that I can cook a 3-course meal, which is not saying a lot for someone like you probably, but for me, it's a huge growth journey. It's a great learning experience, and I think that everyone who can afford it should definitely do it. Not just to put them on the career path, but I think it's a great learning experience as a whole. You get to meet different people from different cultures. I guess the exposure, and that was what I was looking for. You meet it in a place like Bath where it's a melting pot of different cultures. So I think I'd like to end on that note and say it was a great experience for me, and I would definitely urge everyone else who is looking to sort of take this leap of faith to definitely go ahead and do so.